Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Pride and Prejudice was about a girl named Elizabeth. Elizabeth and her family, the Bennets. The Bennet family had Mr. Bennet, who was the dad, Mrs. Bennet, who was the mom, and Elizabeth also had 4 other sisters, making a total of 5 daughters. The story really kicks off when Mr. Bingley, a young, wealthy, eligible new bachelor, moves in. Well, he didn't really look like that, but he was rich. Anyways, Mrs. Bennet really wanted one of her daughters to marry him, mostly for money reasons, but nonetheless, she wanted them to marry him. So the story really kicks off when they go to a ball. Well, not really a ball, a party, but I don't really like calling it a ball or a party because I get the wrong idea. Maybe a dance, but dance makes me think of disco and getting down on the dance floor. So I'm going to call it a get-together of a group of people with dancing and music. So, at the ball get-together dance thing, Mr. Bingley's being a nice gentleman dancing with people. He even asks Elizabeth's sister, Jane, to dance with her. Of course she accepts. And they end up dancing twice that night. And so they really started to like each other. After a while of mingling, Mr. Bingley ends up talking to his friend, Mr. Darcy. He's basically saying that he's been dancing with this really cool girl and she has a sister, and that he should go dance with her. Her name's Elizabeth. And Mr. Darcy's response was basically no. In a grumpy way, he declined and said that he was basically too good to dance with people like that. Meanwhile, she's over there listening to everything they're saying, and Elizabeth develops a prejudice towards him. Later on in the story, Jane goes to the Bingleys' house in their fancy house. She even takes a horse over there. However, she goes in pretty bad weather, so that can only go so well. She later finds out that that really wasn't good for her, and she ended up actually getting very sick. Upon hearing this, and other reasons as well, Elizabeth decides to take some action and go help her sister, like her knight in shining armor, except without a sword, a thermometer, and maybe some medicine, and some love and care. Anyways, when she gets there, she's a mess due to the weather and the fact that she didn't really have a carriage to go in. So everyone there was shocked and even teasing her, and she felt really gross and all. However, not everyone felt this way. Mr. Darcy actually admired her for that, and he started liking her, just a little, and then a little more, until he eventually started to feel stuff for her, and I think that's when it really began. Anyways, the Bennet sisters ended up going home after not too long, actually. So when they got home, they found out that when their dad dies, all of their fortune, all their money, and their house even, is gonna go to a guy named Mr. Collins. All of their money to Mr. Collins. So therefore, the Bennets will be no Bennets. They'll be broke. They'll have nothing. Then Mr. Collins decides to ask Mrs. Bennet if he can propose to one of his daughters. And of course, she's super excited and happy. And he's actually thinking of proposing to Elizabeth. So, he goes to Elizabeth and proposes. You know what she says? She says no. And he was a bit confused and pretty sad, I guess, but he eventually understood. However, Mrs. Bennet, she was furious. But Elizabeth didn't really care how mad she was. Mr. Collins eventually ended up marrying a good friend of Elizabeth's. And you know what? They actually ended up pretty well together. Because the book is so long, we're gonna do this time vortex thing, or else this video would be way too long. So we're just gonna skip to another part of the book right now. We're gonna skip to a very important part of the book, which is when Mr. Darcy proposes. Yeah, well, he's really rude about it, and he's just like, you can be my wife, okay? And she says no. I wonder why. They end up getting really mad at each other and start arguing, and they get really mad at each other. Time vortex, we're gonna skip to another part in the book, just a little later on. We'll go to a beautiful scene in a beautiful garden with trees and flowers. In this beautiful garden, we have a beautiful Elizabeth walking, just taking a nice stroll, when all of a sudden Mr. Darcy comes up, and after getting her attention, he gives her a letter, which she takes, and not long after, he just leaves. He leaves her to read the letter. So, the letter was basically an apology, and she realizes that he's not so bad. He apologizes for all the stuff he's done, and he apologizes even for what Mr. Wickham has said about him. So she officially decides that he's not such a bad guy after all, and she was just being prejudiced towards him and thinking he's super proud this whole time. Anyways, he decides to propose again. Proposal take 2. This time, he does it like a gentleman. And you know what? After all this, Elizabeth, you know what she said? She said yes! And they actually like each other, and they got married. And as many love stories go, they lived happily ever after. I just wanted to take a moment to say that I'm sorry that a lot of details of the book were left out, but this had to be done or else this video will be way too long. This video was brought to you by the amazing Carla and Jasmine. We worked really hard to bring this to you. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.